Good evening, and welcome to the Uni Instrumental Music Program Fall Orchestra Concert. My name is Cameron Wang, and I'm the orchestra's student organization student president. On behalf of Mrs. Lee, Miss Maneewongwathana, and the UHS Instrumental Music students, we thank you for joining us this evening.
The first piece of this evening is Modus by Shirl Atwell, performed by UHS String Orchestra. The Latin word modus has different meanings depending on the context. In this case, it refers to the method of music composition for four voices. The piece demonstrates modal music, which often associated with the Middle Ages and Renaissance. This piece creates a distinct atmosphere by focusing on a tonal center and using a limited set of chords with tension and resolution cycles found in the classic music and lighter. We hope you enjoy.
With Halloween just around the corner, we thought it appropriate to include a spooky piece in our concert. The Haunted Ballroom by Chris Thomas is a ghoulish take on the waltz. Imagine the ballroom scene in Disney's Haunted Mansion ride, and you have the right idea. In this piece, you will hear extended string techniques such as collegno, which refers to using the wood of the bow against the strings. Glissandi, or slides between notes and harmonics. Thank you.
The comedic classical opera Marriage of Figaro, penned by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, is a lighthearted tale of infidelity, disguises, deception, and karmic justice. This aria, or artful song, is based on Il Capro e la Capretta, or The Billy Goat and the Female Goat, from Act IV. In this aria, our singer is singing about the beauty of love as seen in nature, in the harmony of the natural world. She then bemoans the treachery and cruelty of men, who seem only to scorn women. We hope you enjoy aria from Mozart's Marriage of Figaro.
Hello. When Czech composer Antonín Dvořák came to America as an established symphonist and professor, he was filled with optimism about the opportunities he would find in the New World. Throughout his time in America, he began experiencing feelings of longing for his home country. This complex intertwining of feelings, hope and homesickness, buoyancy and melancholy, is the emotional setting from which Dvořák's New World Symphony and tonight's American Quartet stem. You will hear bright, upbeat themes that evoke feelings of discovery, as well as introspective melodies that seem tinged with a sense of yearning. Please enjoy our performance of Dvořák's American Quartet.
Reflections by Nunez is a unique compositional design. It begins with a slow melody stated in violins, then transitions suddenly into a presto. In doing so, it presents a diminution in which the rhythm is shortened to a third its original value. The melody is also inverted,
a compositional device in which the intervals of the melody are played in reserve. These techniques in polyphonic voicing create the oral illusion of a constant shift and perpetual motion. Just like the endless cycle of reflections when two mirrors are faced together, the music continuously develops into a reflection of itself.
Before we begin our second piece here for Philharmonic, I forgot to thank all these wonderful people at the band concert, so I want to make sure I thank them tonight. If you are a teacher, administrator, staff member here at Uni, please wave. And students, as always, thank them for being here tonight. Thank you for supporting us. I see Mr. Giorgino out in the crowd. Thank you for being here. And then students, since most of you are in here except for Symphony Orchestra, please also thank your parents for supporting you students. And thank you to all the booster parents who are helping to put together our concerts, our events, and everything of the such. So thank you to those parents as well. Thank you so much.
La Muerte del Ángel is a tango by Astor Piazzolla, originally composed as an incidental music for the 1962 play El Tango del Ángel. The music reflects the play's narrative of an angel who seeks to heal the residents of a Buenos Aires neighborhood. The piece opens with a tango in the form of a three-part fugue, depicting the raging conflict in the area. In the lento section, the angel appears, performing miracles for the people to help protect and guide them. Ultimately, the angel makes the ultimate sacrifice for the final fight. Please enjoy this performance of La Muerte del Ángel by the UHS Philharmonic Orchestra.
1875 was a year that yielded much joy for Antonín Dvořák. His wife had just given birth to a son, which was a blessing to someone who would prove to be wholeheartedly a family man. He was enjoying great successes in the symphonies that he had penned the year prior, and it was said that this work was written over the course of only 12 days. I can only imagine how much procrastination I could get done in 12 days. You can imagine how inspired he was to create beautiful art as each melody flows from movement to movement. From the tender and amiable opening movement to the gracefully lilting waltz, and finally, the charming and humorous scherzo, each melody sounds as if it had been steeped in nothing but beauty and goodwill. We hope you enjoy our performance, Dvořák's Serenade for Strings.
Looking forward to doing the music, getting to the music, so I'll make this very brief. There are just a few thank yous that I'd like to speak out really quickly before we wrap up our show. The reason that I'm not doing this, normally I would do this within the middle of the set, but the work is meant to be played 3 movements continuously, and so I'll give that speech now. Firstly, thank you very much to our parents for coming out to support, parents for donating food for the reception, for volunteering to help set up in the NPR. We could not do this without you. It gives them so much more time and energy to focus on their music, so thank you, parents. Thank you to our uni staff and administration for making things possible on campus. There are so many needs for our students in terms of supplies and scheduling, and being able to rehearse in this theater space is such a blessing. So thank you to our administration as well. Thank you very much to OSO, who, these are our hardworking students who have organized the reception to this concert. I think I even miffed Cameron Wang. He's not even on the program, and he's our OSO president. Cameron, I'm so sorry. I think the world of you. I really, really do. Please accept my verbal apology, and also thank you for all of the work that you do for setting up. And of course, thank you to our students. They are such a joy to work with. It is a privilege every time we get together and make this beautiful music. So let's thank these guys for putting on a show. That's enough from me. I do deeply love this music, so let's get into it.
Thank you.